Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. I'm Larry Sashin, and today we have a fantastic group of guys together here to discuss the full house fallacy, measuring what really matters. We'll go into this in a little bit, but before I do, I want to thank our sponsor, Ed Flanagan and the Era Group. Listen, for years now, I've been saying if you work very, very hard for for your money, and who doesn't, you want to keep it. You want to keep a hold of it. And if you're not really paying attention to those orders that come in, and you count boxes and you count what's on the invoice and sign the invoice, and the distributor's on his way, wow, you better call Ed Flanagan in the Era Group. Their people will sift through your invoices. They'll sift through your contracts. Make sure you're getting exactly what you paid for at the price you agreed to. And if they feel there's a better place to go, they'll make a suggestion to you. So if you like saving money, call Ed Flanagan in the Era Group. Back to the show. The full house fallacy. How many times have you seen a restaurant full of people and a month later they're out of business? What happened? What happened? Kraft in Manhattan, a mainstay in the landscape, the food landscape, all of a sudden decided to shut their doors. Something didn't make sense anymore. So before we go into the show, why don't we introduce ourselves? Charles, why don't you say hi?
Hi,
Little
Charles
bit more.
Dorn, Managing Director of the Dorn Group. We do operational consulting in food and beverage, strategic planning throughout the industry.
Okay. Michael.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Michael Balsamo. I'm the founder of the Sage Advisory Group, and we work with restaurant owners to identify how their processes are working, what processes and structure do they need to be more profitable, to drive revenue, and to stay in this business much longer than maybe they can without proper systems. So we're here to keep them in business and keep them thriving.
Thank you. Thank you. Say hi, Fred.
Morning, Fred Klashman, editor and publisher of Total Food Service.
Okay, back to the show. The full house fallacy. I just went through an example, and unfortunately, if you check your local business paper, you see restaurant after restaurant after restaurant going out of business. Of course, 2.5 minutes later, there's always somebody with a better idea that opens in the same spot, but there's a problem. People who have been in business for many years are finding it hard to deal with the current climate. Charles, why don't you give a brief description of what might be going on?
Well, we could, as we joked about talking about this show, we could talk about this for weeks and probably continue to have the conversation. But I think there's a number of things. I mean, the restaurant business, on one hand, is incredibly difficult. On the other hand, it's also incredibly easy. It's revenue over expense. And if you don't look at both sides of that on an ongoing basis and you don't evolve, you lose. And that's an oversimplification, of course. But look at something as simple as your brand. What is your brand? Is your brand well presented? Is it consistently presented? Does your product reflect what the brand is? I mean, often you'll walk into a place and hypothetically they'll say they are an Asian restaurant of some sort, and then what do they have? They have a hamburger on the menu, and it's an American hamburger. Okay, I'm not saying they make a bad hamburger, but why does somebody go to an Asian restaurant to eat a hamburger? And when you do things like that, when you take your eye off the ball about the brand, just as a very beginning, you confuse the customer.
Okay. Michael, you see these people every day, and you see who's teetering and who has teetered. What's the story?
Yeah, I agree. There's always some sort of different factors in every business, in every restaurant, what goes on behind the scenes. But I think we both know that being busy and being profitable are two very, very different things. And sometimes you could be busy on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, or any night of the week, any day of the week, any meal period. But at the end of the day, is your business set up to be profitable? Is your margin and your processes and everything that goes into getting ready for that busy day, is that all set up to point you towards profitability? Or did you not look at your scheduling? Did you not look at your prep sheet? Are you overcompensating because you're going to get this hit of wave of customers that never comes, right? So I really think it boils down to knowing your business really, really well and planning and executing accordingly, because you don't want to execute the same on a Tuesday as a Saturday. And I think if you prepare for each day of the week individually, you can do well. But if not, it could put you out of business pretty quickly.
Okay. Fred, what are you hearing?
I don't understand why we're doing this session. Because in this real estate marketplace, unless the right lease was written to begin with, why would an operator walk into something that wasn't going to work for him or her? And why would a landlord sign a lease with somebody where this thing wasn't going to work with a seasoned or experienced operator? So I'm a little bit confused where we're coming from. Why are we here?
Well, we know why the real estate person.
Rhetorically, I'm blaming the whole problem on the lease to begin with. I'm not blaming it on the operation.
I don't think that's fair.
Okay.
I think there are good leases out there, and there are smart operators that have hired the right people to work with their lease, and they get a good market rate and things like that. But to Michael's point, look at the point he made already about day parts. And for example, if you go into it saying, I'm going to be open 7 days a week, 3 meals a day, there's a bad philosophy before you even start, because the reality is you may, if you literally look at expense and revenue on Sunday breakfast, you may find that you're losing, totally hypothetically here, $1,000 every time you open the door on Sunday morning. So why would you be open on Sunday morning? So I think, to Michael's point, you have to look at everything. You have to have the processes in place to be able to do that.
Yeah, and Fred, listen, your point is certainly well.
Yeah,
well
and I
taken.
mean, obviously, it's it's a little bit over the top, but
Listen, it doesn't help, right? If you have that inexperienced operator that walks into a bad lease, I hate to say it, but that's not a good thing for anybody. It's not good for the tenant, the neighborhood, the team, the staff. But I agree with Charles. I think if you do look out there, I think there's more good leases than bad. And sometimes they're marginal, right? A good lease doesn't mean you're making millions. A good lease just means you've got the terms that work, and now you got to go out and put that to use, right?
Right.
And the thing that's consistent with what Charles just said too is when you talk about when you talk about all day parts like that, with that also comes the discussion most recently of SKU consolidation of what you have on your, so the whole thing leads into the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the idea that Charles brought up before is looking at everything and updating things as it happens. I mean, 6 years ago, if my restaurant served skirt steak, that was our mainstay, putting out different renditions of skirt steak. Well, back then, I was paying $7.99 a pound. Look at it today. How do you stay in business doing that? How does a restaurant, what portion of restaurant management should be looking at the day-to-day costs, expenses? How, let's draw out a blueprint for the operators out there so that they don't become one of those teetering people. What's the first step, Michael?
Well, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. If you don't have the process in place, then you're never going to get to a place where you could look at things in more detail and more closely. What do I mean by that? Restaurant managers, restaurant owners, they suffer from decision fatigue. They make 94 decisions every 20 minutes, and each one of them impacts 17 other things. At some point, if someone's going to be really mindful of watching the cost, watching the invoice, managing the menu, they can't be running around doing everything else. They need to delegate. They need to set up a structure within the restaurant that other people can be empowered to do their job so that they could focus on the things that don't take 2 minutes to figure out, but ultimately impact the business in a much, much meaningful way. So I think first is get your structure in place, get the right people in the right seats on the bus, and then you assign responsibilities accordingly.
Okay, Charles, expand on that.
Well, Mike made a point and he said manage the menu, and I can't agree more with that concept. Okay, if the person that is deciding what's on the menu, and I mean this with no disrespect, is the chef, and the chef does not understand it doesn't have the financial acumen to really make that decision, there's a huge problem because he or she may be putting items on the menu that are not profitable. They may not give enough contribution margin. I mean, if you don't understand the concept of menu engineering today, shame on you. And even more than that, cross utilization of products. And you mentioned SKUs, right? Larry, I'm sorry. The reality is, how many times you mentioned skirt steak? If you're bringing in skirt steak and it's for one item on a menu that is ordered 3 times a night, frankly, it probably shouldn't be there. It doesn't take Mike and I to come in and tell you to take it off the menu. But if, even more importantly, if the chef decides that he's buying thousands of dollars worth of fresh truffles when it's truffle season and he uses them 4 times a year, look at the money that's tied up in inventory on truffles. Look, it's a great product. We all love truffles. Invite me to your restaurant. I'll eat the truffles when I come. But the reality is that's probably not an item that belongs there. And it's the same thing on the food side as it is on the beverage side. You don't bring in 11 new bourbons because somebody said, hey, I tried this great one last night, unless you start to drop other bourbons. And all of a sudden you wake up and your inventory cost will be out of control. So it goes to that point that we've all made this morning about it's everything. How do we develop new forms of revenue? Is to-go food or some form of to-go food something that, if you're known for your desserts, and maybe you're known for your pies and cakes that are homemade, perhaps when it comes to holiday seasons, selling them in bulk, not as a slice, but selling them as a piece, gives you a whole different revenue stream. There's expenses involved in that, of course, but you sit down and you do a P&L before you start, and it includes the labor and it includes the price of producing it, et cetera. But you know what? Sometimes people say the best product I've had is that product, and then you can control the quality, you can get it out, and you can get more revenue. But again, you need to turn over all those rocks.
So isn't there's something out there? Some people think it's an uninvited friend. Other people have AI-itis for one reason or another. And they're this is the way grandpa did it and my father did it. This is the way I'm going to do it. Except times were different for grandpa and dad. When should AI be welcome in your establishment?
I honestly, Larry, and I think it's whenever you feel the need to want to implement it. I think it could be a tremendous asset, but I also have a pretty strong belief that technology doesn't run your business. It gives you data. It gives you more data than you could possibly need or want. But again, if you're looking at a P&L on a piece of paper 10 years ago, or you're looking at on a computer screen, or you dump it into Claude or AI, you really have to know what you're looking at, whether it's menu engineering, like Charles pointed out, or any other part to your business. So AI is a wonderful supplement to your business. It could teach you a lot in maybe some strategy sessions or something. But at the end of the day, you got to go out and execute with the business that's in front of you. And I don't think AI could teach us how to do that. There's that human element that I pray to God will never go away from this industry, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think AI can be a great tool, but it's not a solution for everything.
I agree with that. But the fact of the matter is, if you're too busy to look at pieces of paper and things that are going through your office, AI looks at it all and can give you the Reader's Digest version of everything that's coming in or out. And that's where you're correct. Where you take over on that, it gives you what you need in front of you. What do you think, Charles?
Well, I think there's a fine balance between what you said, Larry, and what Michael said. And I agree with Michael 100%. The reality is that AI doesn't eat our food. AI doesn't bring customers into the restaurant. And if we start making decisions based not solely, but heavily on technology without the influence of our customers, we've gone the wrong direction. And I always admire chefs that will, for example, run specials and see what it's not the idea of running a special, it's the idea of seeing what my members or my guests want. If in fact I run a special tonight and I put soft shell crabs on and it doesn't sell, well, then don't go put soft shell crabs on the menu. And in fact, many of the chefs that I've worked with, and I'm sure Michael would say the same thing, will say to you, I put specials on the menu with the intent on figuring out what's going to be on the menu in the long run. Those are the people that are letting their customers actually make the decision. Now, if somebody doesn't like the soft shell crabs, do I want to walk out in the dining room and find out why? Are they being ordered and not eaten? That's a different story. Then the chef needs to go out and find out, or the server or the manager or someone needs to go out and find out why. It may be the preparation, it may be the presentation, it may be the portion size, the value may be wrong, but they may love soft shell crabs. But that's not something AI can tell us. And so I think we need to.
For instance, what's going on now with alcoholic consumption? I mean, there's no AI in the world that's going to help you figure that out. We have a problem and have a challenge and have to figure out a response.
Well, that's absolutely correct. And, to your point, Fred, you'll walk into a restaurant and you'll look at a wine list, and I'm not talking about going to 5-star restaurants, but you'll walk into a wine list and there's no bottle of wine under $125. And you scratch your head. Yeah. And Michael scratches his head, I scratch my head, and we say, what rock are these folks under? Because the reality is, A, if I look at this neighborhood, B, I look at the value, the food side of it, that doesn't match, doesn't correspond. If I go to a dinner at Danielle, 11 Madison Park, some of the 5-star restaurants, I expect to pay a lot of money for. I don't want to, but I expect to pay a lot of money for wine. That's been something they've always done, and there's always neat and fun things there. But I also know that I'm not walking in and spending $50 a person. But if I walk in someplace and the entree is $25 and every single bottle of wine is $125, I'm not buying wine. I'm buying a glass of wine, most likely. What's a smart restaurateur, to your point in that situation, Fred? Go back to the carafe idea. Okay, there's great wines you can buy in bulk, or do the Italian thing and do the portions in the beautiful little glass carafes. It's a nice presentation. Waiter brings over a glass. Waiter brings over the individual carafe. He pours half of it, and you get good revenue for it. But again, you need to be creative in how you do all the stuff, not just the stuff we've spoken about.
Okay, back to creativity. How do we spur creativity? Michael, you have something to say.
Well, I was going to tag on to what Charles said to Fred's first question about beverage. It's changing the industry. Everybody's beverage strategy is changing overnight. Society is not drinking as much as they used to for all different kinds of reasons. I don't see that going back to the way it was before. You just can't carry as much inventory. You're not going to move as much. And to Charles's point, you need to be creative about how are you going to get the revenue that you can get before it gets any worse. And I do want to share one more thing about this whole conversation. There's a chef out of Toronto that wrote an article not long ago, and he talked about a systemic problem in the industry where the perceived value of what people are willing to pay for food today, not just, oh, that's too much to pay, everything's so expensive, but a legit divergence in what someone is willing to pay across all major cities in the country, whether it be for a hamburger or fish or a steak or what have you. If a restaurant owner has to charge a certain dollar amount just to keep the lights on, and enough people feel that that perceived value is too much for what they're willing to pay, that's a bigger problem as well. And that's even bigger than the systems and the structure and so on. It's like the housing market. It's like anything else, supply and demand, right? But if all I do is sell hamburgers and I legit have to sell it for $20 just to keep the lights on, and enough people don't want to pay $20, I have a big problem. Either I shut down and go someplace else, or I re-engineer my business model and try to back into something more successful. But I just wanted to share that with the group.
Yeah, I think there's another outside force working against everybody. The price of oil. A couple of weeks ago, it looked like the price of oil was going down, and I saw all the restaurants in the neighborhood packed. Then pops up above $100 a barrel, and the restaurants aren't as packed. There's just so many different variables you have to look at now that you never had to consider before. Mm-hmm. How do we focus the restaurateur on these things?
I think it just comes back to what I like to say, go back to basics. You really have to just figure out a way to know your business inside and out. Don't overextend where you don't need to, whether it be with expenses, with your time. Don't try to be who you're not, right? Go back to basics. If you're going to make mac and cheese, be the best damn mac and cheese around, right? I think that's what's going to really help people survive, is just go back to basics. Don't get too ahead of yourself. Know your customer, provide a great experience. That'll never be a bad thing, and know your business.
Okay. Well, Michael mentioned the word overextend, and I'm sure that the two of us could sit here and compare notes, but it's always somewhat scary to me. I was going to say entertaining, but scary to me when I walk into a property, no matter what it is, what type of property it is, and I look at things like inventory. Okay. I mean, there's different theories out there about how much inventory you should carry. I think as an industry kind of standard, I'm not sure I 100% agree with it. They say 2 weeks, but that's not far off. And then I walk in, and what do I find? I've got somebody that's got 3 months of worth of inventory sitting in there. And just think of the value of money. If nothing else, you've tied up all those dollars. And you start looking at someone that decides, well, the restaurant's full, the premise that you started this entire conversation with, restaurant's full, I need new chairs. Well, wait a second. Do you need new chairs because you want new chairs, or do you need new chairs? I mean, we all want things, but maybe the new chairs need to go into next year's operation or next year's capital budget as versus buying them right now. Or maybe you need to go shop them and find that they can be made somewhere else cheaper, and handle the decision as a legitimate business decision. And so right now, you're right. When you walk into somebody's restaurant on Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, they're slammed. Don't make the decision based on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. There's 4 of the days of the week, and let's look at those and make sure it makes sense.
Now, how many restaurants have you seen that you go to on the weekend and you can't get a table, but you walk in on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and it's crickets? All you hear is the sound of crickets.
And I maintain it's crickets because they haven't had the creativity to bring in to do a trivia night, or do some kind of special event night, or something fun that's community oriented. So I think it talks to, whether you buy a piece of fish at a supermarket or you buy a piece of fish at a restaurant, it's still a piece of fish. So there's a commodity involved in here. And what does the operator do to take themselves out of that commodity and build something different in terms of experience?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you look at somebody like Danny Meyer, many of his restaurants actually have 2 restaurants inside of the same shell. So if you look at Gramercy Tavern, for example, the front room is a lower price point, always busy. And, the back dining room, much more formal, 5-course prefix with choices. And again, he's figured out a way to get butts in the seat all the time. And I will tell you, in conversations, and I'm only using him as an example, they are talking about what do they need to do to keep the back room evolving, shall we say. Okay, because the people that'll go have a 5-course prefix, they're not going to be around forever. The generation that is behind them, or the generations that are behind them, may want 3 courses. They may want 4 courses. They may not want prefix. Okay, so it's the phrase I use a lot. It's evolution, not revolution. So the customers that continue to come to Gramercy Tavern and Danny's other restaurants always feel comfortable. If you eat in Gramercy Tavern in the front room and you suddenly decide, you know what, I've always heard about the Modern, you may look at the dining room price at the Modern and go, say that I don't want to spend that kind of money.
Mhm.
Well, you may say, I want to try the chef's food, or go to Sisiyama and do the same thing. And you sit in the front and get to try it. Then maybe there's a special occasion, you'll go to the back room. But again, that creativity, the word you use, Fred, of getting people in on off nights, off time periods, running a less expensive lunch. The restaurateurs that offer that same hamburger at lunch and dinner and charge a different price is a baffling business equation. I've never quite figured out why they do that and the logic behind it. So are we ripping people off at lunch, or are we giving people at dinner a break? I'm not quite sure. Depends on how you look at it, of course.
Yeah, it's funny because if you look at Westchester County in New York, Monday night seems to be burger night. All the smart restaurateurs are offering a burger and a glass of wine or a glass of beer. Some offer a burger, glass of wine, and a starter off of a special menu just to bring people in on Monday. Some people on Wednesdays do mussels. Now, the idea is very few families, everybody is going to order mussels at the table, and they're going to order something else. Somebody's going to be ravenous about mussels, going to eat all they can eat, and everybody else is going to order off the menu. It's just, use your brain. What'll bring
Just saw the announcement about the mussels this week, so I know what you're eating.
Yeah. So
the other thing is, it's not the end of the world if you decide to go from a fresh piece of fish to a frozen piece of fish, etc., and you've changed what you need to do with the bun and the topping, etc., to bring some creativity. We back to menu engineering. It's okay to do.
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree with you, Fred, but think about your brand.
Yeah.
Okay. So if, for example, you're known for great, incredible fresh seafood, and you then start subbing in frozen seafood in different places, it's got to be such a different product presented so well that people don't compare. So, for example, let's say you're bringing in Copper River salmon, and it's line caught Copper River salmon, and that's dinner and an entree. And then you're doing maybe you're doing a salmon salad at lunch. That might be an okay, acceptable.
Right.
That might be it's so different that people don't compare. Right. But the problem is that sometimes people don't think about that. But the point's well taken. Now, it goes back to Larry's comment about skirt steak. Okay. Restaurateurs that have, let's say they're great everyday 3-star restaurants and they're perfect to have lunch and dinner in, casual, do not need 3 different steaks on the menu. With the cost of steak today, okay, they probably could get away with 1, and there probably are days of the week where nobody orders steak. Okay. But then to that point, and what you've all said is, why can't we do something on a Monday night steak special or something like that, where we knock the price down, or we do a smaller portion, or both?
Yeah. That's already happened in restaurants. Go to an Italians that you used to go to all the time. Excuse me. And look for veal. Now it's chicken and pork. It's chicken and pork. They have found a way to slide this in. And after the first, where's the veal? People taste it, and it's good, and it's much cheaper. It's how you introduce.
Yeah. And I think that's a different issue. Larry, I think that's a different issue. I think that's become a sourcing issue in many cases. Because people want to know how things are being sourced. And veal was not on the happy side of that.
No.
That's right. There's not a lot of veal in the marketplace today the way that was when we all were started in the business. And Michael's a lot younger, so I can look at the people on one side of the call. And not only that, when you talk about certain generations, to Fred's point, when they ask them about veal and they have this misperception of veal, it's just not an easy sell. Just the same way, German wines are not an easy sell.
Yep.
Yeah, listen, I think everything we're talking about today, gentlemen, is really even more of what restaurant owners need to do to survive today. And I can't stress enough how the clients I work with, there's always an aha moment about labor, about food costs, about menu. And I just hope, Charles, you and I are out there trying to help these folks see the business differently, have more clarity, implement a certain standard or procedure to help them just kind of 6 more months, another year, another 2 years to just kind of ride the wave with all the things that Fred and Larry have talked about as being challenges. Knowing your business, knowing your customer, and a great experience. There's a lot more than that right now that they have to concentrate on.
Michael, you make a really good point about processes, and I know you've made it a number of times and stressed it, part of your corporate philosophy. But so many restaurateurs make decisions by the seat of their pants, and they don't think about what goes into that decision. And so, yeah, maybe you look at food cost on an item, but you don't look at the labor to produce it. Things as simple as that
Yeah.
can really make you or break you.
Yeah. I mean, they don't need to be process laden, but they do need to have some structure that makes sense. And to your point, all the decisions they're making, it needs to be looked at more closely now than ever. Yeah.
Okay, guys, as usual, time is our enemy. So before we go back and give that last bit of information that you want to leave with our viewers, let's once again thank our sponsor, Ed Flanagan and the Era Group. Listen, if you're tired of paying those employee taxes all the time, call Ed Flanagan. His group has a 125 IRS sponsored cafeteria plan that can help you claw back some of that money and put it towards some useful benefits to your employees. So call Ed Flanagan, the Era Group. Guys, it's been a great show. Been a wonderful show. I appreciate you coming here, taking your time and being on it. But let's go around the room and give that last tidbit of information that people should know when they listen to our video. Michael, why don't you start?
Well, Larry, it's a pleasure to be here with you and Fred and Charles. I really enjoyed this morning. And again, my prayer, my wish, my hope is that restaurant owners continue to thrive in whatever way works for them. Every restaurant's different, but know your business, know your clients, connect with your guests, keep your team engaged, educated, motivated. And I think at the end of the day, sticking with the basics and taking care of your team and your guests is always a good way to be successful. And I hope that I get a chance to help more restaurant owners do that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Charles.
I want to pick up on something Michael just said. We haven't talked about it during the show, but it's the whole conversation about employees. Yes, you have to keep them happy. I agree 1,000% on that. But they come across feedback that we don't get. And if you don't solicit your employees for that feedback and you don't make it easy for them to give that feedback, you're losing an opportunity, because Michael can recommend all the things in the world. I can recommend all the things in the world. If your guest doesn't like it because your employees know it, shame on you. So I think just as over a 30,000-foot thing, don't forget to turn over all those rocks. You've done it this way for years. Doesn't mean that's the way it should be done today. Always constantly turn over those rocks.
100%.
Okay. Well, Fred, what do you think?
Creativity and experience, and talk and call guys like this and get help and see what's out there in terms of options and alternatives. Because boy, I've never seen so much change as there is today.
Yeah. Back to change. If the business can't be a daily grind. The daily grind has to add creativity to it, which breaks up the daily grind. You have to look for new things constantly. And basically you have to check to see what's there, what's happening today, so you're not and have any problems tomorrow. So, guys, thank you for being here today. It was a great show, and we'll be back next week. So everybody, just 2 things left to say. Stay positive, test negative, and if you're in the East Coast, stay dry. Have a good one.
Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.